And war. For the average American, who knew that this Russian invasion of Ukraine would actually steal from your breadbasket? And not only yours, but everyone around the world. The United Nations this week is warning that this fight could cause one of the most disastrous global food shortages since World War II. Russia has actually become the largest exporter of wheat worldwide, and Ukraine is also a major contributor. And that's why Representative Austin Scott joins me now as a senior member of the House Armed Services Committee and the House Agricultural Committee. He's monitoring and preparing for food shortage across the globe due to what he says is Vladimir Putin's obsession with restoring the former Soviet Union. Good to have you, Congressman. Let's talk about Ukrainian farmers. And you wrote about this. They've had to become fighters, trading tractors for tanks. Has that just wiped out their farms?
It pretty much has, at least for the next several months. And as you know, if you don't get a crop planted, then you can't get a crop harvested. And so, Carol, what we're seeing right now is that the labor's not there to get the crops in the ground. The diesel's not there to run the equipment. You've got logistical issues with seed and chemicals and fertilizer. So we're very concerned that Ukraine is not able to get a crop planted, much less harvested. And they have been the largest supplier of the UN World Food Program, 50 million metric tons of corn and wheat that they export to the world. And so when we talk about these shortages, I want people who are watching this to understand, I still think if you're in the United States, you're going to be able to go to the grocery store and you're going to be able to buy a loaf of bread. We're talking about those countries that are fed out of the UN World Food Program and some of the other less fortunate countries that literally may not have food.
Right, and they depend on those bags of grain. We see it in every situation being brought in to help people that are in fear of starving. You know, not just you're not the only one talking about this, but Secretary of State Antony Blinken blaming Russia today, actually, for the soaring prices of staples like wheat. And President Biden, as you know, had it on his agenda as he met with European leaders. Let's take a listen.
It's going to be real. The price of these sanctions is not just imposed upon Russia. It's imposed upon an awful lot of countries as well, including European countries and our country as well. And because both Russia and Ukraine have been the breadbasket of Europe in terms of wheat, for example. We are in the process of working out with our European friends what it would take to help alleviate the concerns relative to food shortages.
And as you know, the president also said that he and the Canadian Prime Minister Trudeau, they talked about increasing agricultural production in the U.S. and Canada to help make up for these shortfalls. He's actually urging countries to drop trade restrictions. Do you support that? And what else do you think the U.S. should be doing?
Sure, I do think we should drop the trade restrictions, absolutely. And you know, the one thing I want to point out is that it's not necessarily the sanctions that are going to lead to the shortage as much as it is that the war is going to prevent the crops from even being planted, and the logistics of getting the crop in the field and out of the field and actually delivered to people that need it. So you may see some increased price in the U.S. from, for example, the Russian oil ban, which I support. I wish we had done it in December instead of this past month. But it's not the sanctions that are going to lead to the shortage of food globally. It is the Russian invasion and the inability to actually plant the crops. Now, the other issue that we have to watch in the U.S. for our agriculture is the increased cost of production, going up from $300 to $400 an acre, depending on where you are, because Russia is the #1 producer of nitrogen. They are number 2 or number 3 in Belarus, falling in number 2, number 3 in potash. Now, Canada does have the ability to put more potash in the market. They're number 1. But those are 2 of the 3 primary ingredients in fertilizer. And so we're very concerned also about cost of production in the U.S. and, you know, just logistically the ability to have the fertilizer that we need for the yields that we're used to in America, not just for this crop year, but for the next one as well.
Well, then we should probably talk about sunflowers as well. I don't think a lot of people realize. So tell us a little bit about that. I mean, sunflower oil. Look, I use it. I know a lot of people that use it, and a lot of countries depend on it.
Sure. Ukraine is number 1 in sunflower, and therefore number 1 in sunflower oil. The oil goes to India, it goes to Africa, and it comes to the United States. And The fact of the matter is, again, you and I will probably pay a little more for that sunflower oil when we walk into the grocery store, but it's going to be those low-income countries around the world that is simply not going to be available in those countries. And so we're talking about the basics of life that Vladimir Putin has eliminated for a lot of the low-income and poor countries around the world. And so I think the UN needs to be pressing on a weekly basis to make sure that countries like China, who have been supportive through silence in some cases and supportive through positive votes in other cases of Russia and Russia's invasion, the UN needs to be doing more to get these countries on record with regard to where they stand for the damage that's being done to the global food supply by Vladimir Putin and his invasion.
And we can't forget 1932, the Great Famine. Stalin starved millions of Ukrainians. We don't want history to repeat itself. Congressman Austin Scott, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much, Karen.